This is why you should always lock your crawl space. In 2019, a young woman had just moved into the second floor of an apartment building. She noticed a tiny crawl space that connected all the apartments on the floor, but she wrote it off, citing, "Who'd be small enough to crawl through that?" One night, she walks into her living room, and out on the fire escape is a tiny woman desperately trying to yank open her locked windows. Terrified, she hides behind some furniture until the woman eventually leaves, at which point she runs into a room, grabs her phone, and calls the police. While waiting for the cops to arrive, she hears something above her and she looks up. One of the ceiling tiles had popped up, and the woman from the fire escape is staring down at her. She'd used the crawl space to get up there. The girl screams and the woman scurries away. It took 3 days for the police to finally get the woman out of the crawl space and bring her into custody. Turns out she was on some unknown, extremely hard drug and had totally lost her mind. This is why you should always lock your crawl space. In 2019, a young woman had just moved into the second floor of an apartment building. She noticed a tiny crawl space that connected all the apartments on the floor, but she wrote it off, citing, "Who'd be small enough to crawl through that?" One night, she walks into her living room, and out on the fire escape is a tiny woman desperately trying to yank open her locked windows. Terrified, she hides behind some furniture until the woman eventually leaves, at which point she runs into a room, grabs her phone, and calls the police. While waiting for the cops to arrive, she hears something above her and she looks up. One of the ceiling tiles had popped up, and the woman from the fire escape is staring down at her. She'd used the crawl space to get up there. The girl screams and the woman scurries away. It took 3 days for the police to finally get the woman out of the crawl space and bring her into custody. Turns out she was on some unknown, extremely hard drug and had totally lost her mind. This story has the best ending ever. In 2003, a 9-year-old was home alone playing video games when he thinks he hears his cat meowing on the back patio, so he goes downstairs to let him in. He sees a deranged-looking man standing on his back patio howling at the sky, who then quickly looks at the boy. He grabs a fistful of cigarette butts from the ashtray, stuffs them in his mouth before he starts howling at the sky some more. After the police take the man away, they come back to talk to the boy and his family. Turns out the man had severe autism and lived in that boy's house up until his mother passed away, at which time he was transitioned to a mental institution. He broke out of that mental institution to go looking for his mom, which is how he came back to the boy's house. 15 years later, that same boy is sitting on his same back patio when he starts to hear that same meowing sound, and he looks up and it's the same autistic man walking towards his house. Knowing the man's story, he invites him into his house. The man's face lights up, he runs inside and starts crying. He was finally home. The men become friends, and every week Tom goes home to visit. If you scare easily, swipe on. In 1989, a woman started hearing strange banging sounds in her walls and in the ceiling. And then one night, the crawl space to her attic was open, so she went to go have a look. When she's just feet away, an old man suddenly appears in the crawl space and looks her dead in the eye before vanishing. There was nobody else in the house. Worried no one's going to take her seriously over an apparent ghost in her house, she ends up calling a paranormal investigator. When the paranormal crew arrived, they were actually very skeptical until they heard loud banging in the attic and they decided to go up and have a look. As soon as the two men get up into the attic, one of them screams and suddenly disappears. The other, who didn't have a flashlight, starts using the flash on his camera to illuminate the attic. And he takes one of the most famous pictures in paranormal history. His partner, who was in total shock, had been lifted off the ground and tied to one of the beams. That was the last night the woman ever stayed in the house. However, it's still being rented out today, but nobody stays longer than 1 or 2 months.
My boyfriend's crazy ex is sitting on the couch and I'm terrified. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. She had just finished sending me a bunch of DMs on Instagram totally abusing me. But my boyfriend didn't know this. I walk into the apartment and they're both sitting on the couch. She turns around and asks him, "Is that her?" My boyfriend looks at me with a serious face and says, "Yes, that's her." Then she shows me DMs on Instagram that I had supposedly sent to some guy, and that she passed herself off as this guy to see if I would fall. And the messages were so dirty and disgusting. I tell my boyfriend that's not me and that I would never do that to him. He just stares at me and doesn't say anything. That's when I try to show him all of the DMs that she had just sent me. But I noticed they were all gone. She actually unsent every single DM. Now I had no proof and it was just her word against mine. That's when I accused her of planting the cameras in our bedroom. She actually smiled at me and turned around and told my boyfriend she would never do that. Then she slapped me. Storytime about how I found out my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend was spying on us in the bedroom. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My boyfriend and I have been together for 1 year. Our relationship is really good. We're like best friends and we tell each other everything. He always wants to spend time with me and we're planning on moving in together. Our families love each other and they're looking forward to us getting married someday. I'll call my boyfriend Dan. When Dan and I started dating, he told me that he had a really crazy ex. He was extremely controlling and didn't let him hang out with his friends or even his family. And when he broke up with her, she went nuts. She actually told her family that he was abusive just to get back at him. When we got together, Dan told me that he was scared his ex might try to do something to us. I told him not to worry, that she wouldn't do anything at all. Boy, was I wrong. Dan had his own apartment and I would stay at his place most nights. And of course, we did stuff in his bedroom. One night that we're on his bed doing stuff, I see a little tiny lens on his bookshelf pointing straight to us. I hadn't noticed it before, so I asked him what it was. He said he didn't know, so he went to it and pulled it out. It was a tiny little camera. Part 2 is up. When my boyfriend and I are doing the dirty on his bed, I notice there's a little lens pointing straight at us. He goes to grab it and we realize it's a little camera. The whole time we've been doing stuff on his bed, it's been recording us. That's when my boyfriend Dan said that it must have been his crazy ex. Let's call her Casey. He had told me that she was really crazy, but I didn't think she was that crazy. Dan starts looking throughout his whole apartment and he finds 2 more little cameras. One in the kitchen and one in the bathroom. As you can imagine, we didn't sleep that entire night. Of course, we went to the police and they opened an investigation, but they said they couldn't find anything. A week later, I get a DM from Casey, his ex-girlfriend. She starts abusing me through DM, calling me a bunch of names. She even said that I stole Dan from her, but I hadn't even met Dan when they broke up. Then she sends me a picture of my house, which means she knows where I live. I go straight to my boyfriend's apartment and when I open the door, guess who's there? Casey is sitting on the couch with my boyfriend. It gets scarier. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I got bullied my last year of high school by the most popular girl. Okay, so this is my story time. A lot of you requested one, but I'm also at the airport, so sorry for any noise. So most of my high school years were spent in Nicaragua, except for my last year of high school. You see, I booked a show in Miami, so I had to move to the US. I was also doing modeling, commercials, and a lot of radio. I enrolled in the local high school and it was like literally culture shock for me. I had never experienced an American high school, American parties, or even like actually mingled with American kids. I was really shocked to see how like adult they were. For example, boys and girls were doing adult things. I was constantly being invited to parties where people were drinking, but I never actually went. So the most popular girl in school decided to befriend me in quotation marks. By the way, there were so many times where I spent lunch in the bathroom like Caddy from Mean Girls. It was like Mean Girls but real life. So this popular girl, she was also a model, and we kind of bonded over that. But behind my back, she had a bet to see which boy would take me to prom. She wanted to see how far this boy could get with me, if you know what I mean.
Part 2, I'm sorry for the delay. So I'm still chasing after him, and people at the park are like starting to look at us now because I'm chasing after him and I'm telling him to stop walking. And so he stops and I tell him again to delete the photo from the deleted album, and he goes, "I don't have a deleted album." And I was like, "Yes, you do. Everybody does. It'll take 10 seconds. And he goes, "Fine." And he like goes in his phone, does something for a second. He goes, "There, it's gone." And I was like, "Could I see the deleted album just to make sure it's gone?" And he goes, "No, you can't look at my phone." And I was like, "I don't want to look at your phone. I just want to see the album just to make sure the picture is gone. That's it." And he goes, "No, you're not going to look at my phone." And I was like, "Sir, I'm not going to stop and I'm not going to leave until you show me the album. So please just show me the album so we can be done with this." So he shows me the album. The picture was still there. So I made him delete it in front of my eyes. What if I hadn't noticed that he took a picture of my address? And what if I went home that day and, that night when I took my dog out to pee, he was outside waiting for me? I mean...
So I started stealing my mom's underwear to sell them online. So basically I started keeping track of every single time my mom went to shower. After she was done showering, I would make sure to go and steal her underwear, her dirty underwear. Then I would take a peek into her laundry basket and grab whatever was there too. In just the first month of selling my mom's underwear, I had made $500. So I started selling even more underwear. And I started selling them for $75 a pop. And this is gross, but some guys wanted my mom's underwear after she went to the gym. Totally disgusting, but those are the ones that I could really sell for more money. One day my mom started getting really suspicious, asking me where I got the money to buy all the stuff that I was getting. And of course she started freaking out because she noticed a lot of her underwear started going missing. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it was sent to me on Instagram. Well, I didn't know this, but my mom had installed cameras because she was getting really nervous that she had a stalker. So I would go on about my day stealing my mom's underwear. Little did I know I was being filmed every second of the day. There's a knock on the door one day and it's the police. Part 3 is